I learned how to live by watching my father die. Okay, so I know it sounds like really dark and really sad, but I promise this is not going to be a sob story of how much pain I was in while he was passing away. This is how I learned to forgive myself for being a child during the death of my father, and how him dying taught me how to love other people properly. So again, I'm not going to make you cry, and you guys don't make me do that. So to begin, my father and I were very close when I was young, but he was also very sick for most of my life. I was a very imaginative child when I was younger, and so I spent a lot of my time tuned out of reality. And this could manifest in reading books, or watching movies or shows or cartoons where there was a superhero who would always save the day and fix everything and get the girl or get the guy, depending on what gender. And I really loved the action and the anxiety of not knowing how the superhero was going to do it, but knowing that he would, and that at the end everything would be okay. And my father also really loved these shows and these movies, so he'd spend time with me watching them. And we'd even watch Cartoon Network every time when he got home after work. And I always really looked forward to it because it was our time that we spent together. And he was really busy a lot, so I didn't see him most of the day. You see, when we'd watch these shows together, I could almost forget that he was really sick. He had a thyroid condition for most of his life that made him incredibly fatigued. And so although he tried his best, he wasn't always really able to spend a lot of time going on adventures with me. And being a child who really valued the hero's journey, I always wish he could have shared in more experiences with me that he couldn't. And of course, I was a child, and children are always right. So of course I was right and justified, and always wishing that he could give more. I also remember it being a completely normal day when my mom and dad sat me down and said, Tirzah, your father just got stage 4 colon cancer, and he started chemotherapy immediately. But my family was ready. We were positive he was going to be fine. We were praying. We had friends from church that would come over every day, and they would pray over him, and they would anoint him with oil and everything. We were like, it's going to be fine. We even created a fundraising group called the Drew Crew, because my father's name was Andrew. And it was, okay, disclaimer, my grandma was one of 18 children, so basically an entire town in Maine was part of the Drew Crew. And as you can imagine, being 9 years old, I was the talk of the town. Everybody loved me. Everybody wanted to talk to me, and I was loving it. I was in theater for most of my time as a child, so I was absolutely living the spotlight, and I loved it. I loved it. But again, at the same time, I didn't really understand what it was for. I actually didn't find out until recently when I was like, Mom, what is the Drew Crew? She was like, that was for your father's medical bills. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. I thought it was just to be cool. Around this time also, we began to change our diets in my household. My father began reading books a little bit closer he got to dying about how to heal your body from the inside and let that change into the outside. And so this meant no more chicken nuggets from McDonald's on Wednesdays, and that was like my routine for most of my life, so I was devastated. I was so sad, and I was always really angry on Wednesdays when my mom would make salads. I was like, but I think in hindsight, that's why I have such an emphasis on vegan morals today. Is because as my father was passing, it was something he became very passionate about. And with him being unable to control the loss of his life, I made a decision with my eating habits to not contribute to any more life-taking. Unfortunately, my father passed away on April 1st, 2010. He was surrounded by family, but I wasn't there. I'd been at school the whole day, and so I remember my aunt picking me up, and she said, Tirzah, your father's body is very tired today, and he's finally asleep. And I didn't say anything because I guess in my mind I thought if I didn't acknowledge it, if I didn't think about it, if I didn't talk about it, it wouldn't be happening at all. And that was a really toxic mindset to be in because it was happening, and I was tuning out again like I used to do. In fact, I didn't even speak at his funeral. Because again, I was thinking that if I don't talk about it, if I'm not acknowledging it, if I'm not speaking about it, it's not true, and it's not happening now. And it was. And again, being a child who already didn't like to tune it into reality, you can imagine how hard this was for me to actually cope with. And so for many years, following the loss of my father, I didn't. And therefore, this created a lot of anger at myself years following for tuning out and not being able to comprehend what was going on at the time, and for being a child. You see, I thought that I wasn't giving what I should have been able to be giving at the time when he was passing. But I learned that forgiving myself and moving forward differently are the only ways to continue living. So what do I mean by this? I had to forgive myself for being a child while he was passing, because I didn't appreciate him in the ways that I would have if he were alive today. I used to think that I didn't love him well enough because I always needed more from him. And it took years for me avoiding my problems to even work up the courage to confront them. But when I did, I came to the conclusion that it was okay that I was a child when he was passing, because it's exactly what I was. And it was unfair of me to look back on my past with my father and always feel regret for how I was, instead of allowing myself to move forward and love the other people in my life with a healthy mindset. I felt guilty for something that I could not control, but I found freedom when I forgave myself for being exactly what I was, a child. I therefore also made the decision to move forward differently, and to not let my past define how I was going to love the other people in my life or the people I was going to meet. You see, my father, as he was dying, taught me that love is not something that has to be earned with a checklist of requirements that I deem good enough. Love is something that is selfless and that you change yourself for. And so I did change. I made the decision to love the people in my life with intention and without requirements. And I decided to change myself and mold myself to be able to fit those parameters. You see, I may have been childish in how I loved people before, but I could be mature in how I would love people later, and how I wish I could love my father if he were here today. It took a lot of trial and error to figure out how to cope with the pain that I'd been feeling regarding the death of my father. But when I was able to work up the courage to face it, it was probably the best decision that I ever made, because I was able to escape the cycle of regret that I had been stuck in, and I was able to pursue relationships which I had been neglecting. So please, don't do what I did. Go love others now, and go invest in relationships that you have around you, because you can. And go appreciate the people who love you. You don't have to wait for somebody to die for you to realize that you can change your life now. Don't do what I did. Do better. Thank you.